morning. It's Tuesday, October 14th, 2014. This is the morning edition on I-24 News. Coming up later today, military commanders in the coalition against the Islamic State group are to meet in Washington as Turkey denies it struck a deal to allow its bases to be used for airstrikes. In a non-binding but sweeping decision, UK lawmakers vote in favor of recognizing a Palestinian state. And later on the show, Lena Dunham's next project, turning Catherine Colberti into a movie. Good morning, I'm Nurit Zanger, sitting in for Yael Lavi. We begin this morning with the fight against the Islamic State group and the ongoing battle to get a firm coalition to do it. Military commanders of the U.S.-led coalition are to meet in Washington today, but in the background, a lot of uncertainty in the very critical Turkey-U.S. relationship. Turkey has denied it reached a deal with the U.S. to allow its air bases to be used to launch airstrikes, which could be a game changer in the success of the fight. With me in the studio is Channel 2's Foreign Affairs editor, Arad Nir. Thanks very much for being with me.
Thanks for having me.
A lot of questions for you, but before, let's take a quick look back.
The turmoil on the Iraq-Syria border deepened Monday when a triple suicide bombing killed at least 28 people in the Kurdish-controlled town of Karatapah. Meanwhile, in the Syrian border town of Kobani, IS militants are fighting to regain control in a battle that has lasted for weeks. U.S. Secretary of State John Kerry says that saving the town is not part of his country's plan to fight the IS.
But I want to make it clear that as they make decisions about what the options are, Kobani does not define the strategy of the coalition with respect to Daesh.
But what does this mean for the international coalition against the terrorist group? Kerry seemed to diminish expectations of a quick solution.
But we have said from day one it is going to take a period of time to bring the coalition thoroughly to the table, to rebuild some of the morale and capacity of the Iraqi army.
However, there is a new and strategically powerful player in the coalition ranks. Turkey has become an important player in the coalition against the IS with its decision to allow the training of Syrian rebel fighters in its territory.
First of all, the Turks have, just in the last several days, made a commitment that they will, in the first instance, allow the United States and our partners to use Turkish bases and territory.
But the Turkish Prime Minister's office denied a deal with the U.S. to allow it to use its airbase. Meanwhile, from the Turkish city of Marist Pinar, smoke can be seen bellowing over the embattled Kobani as the clashes between the IS and Syrian rebels continue. The IS reportedly lost 36 gunmen during fighting in the last few days, making the battle for Kobani one it cannot afford to lose.
So, Arad, we just heard Rice saying that Turkey did agree to this deal. Obviously, they're not being so clear on that. Can this coalition be successful? Can the fight really go further without Turkey playing a major role?
Well, Turkey has made it quite clear last night that there is no agreement ongoing. It seems that the Americans have got some difficulties understanding the Turks. From what I know, the Turks speak quite adequate English. And apparently
so it's the Americans' fault maybe for misunderstanding.
No, maybe they're misleading them, I don't know. But from the onset of this crisis, there seems to be a ongoing misunderstanding between
the U.S. since the beginning
Washington.
seems to have been very, very eager to announce at each point XYZ have joined the coalition, to announce that the coalition is building, that they have assistance, that they have pledges to help.
And most importantly, Turkey. Let me just remind our viewers of Geography 101. Turkey shares a 900 kilometers borderline with Syria and another 300 kilometers borderline with Iraq.
And a Syrian border that's been in chaos for a long time.
It's the longest bordering country that can be with the coalition, that can join the coalition. And funny enough, or awkwardly enough, they are reluctant to do it. Now, the reason is that the Turks have got a total different set of interests.
A lot of domestic interest. I think this is maybe a great example of that.
Their first priority is to get rid of Bashar al-Assad in Syria. Until President Obama does not declare this as one of the main, if not the main target of this operation, they will not join.
So I want to ask you, if Turkey has put a condition that the United States commit to fighting Bashar al-Assad, for them to actually help with the airstrikes. Let's also 101 try to make sense of this. How can the United States and the coalition strike Assad's enemies, which include the Islamic State group, and at the same time fight Bashar al-Assad? How does Turkey expect to do that?
Well, Turkey is concerned mainly with Bashar al-Assad. They are not really concerned with ISIS, and that's the truth of the matter. Some people would claim that President Erdogan has some adherence or maybe even sympathy towards the ideas of ISIS, not towards what they do, but towards what
not how they do it, but what they're aiming for.
They're aiming to get there. And apparently, Turkey is not going to change. You know, Turkey was bashing Israel for attacking Hamas in Gaza. Actually, yesterday they pledged $200 million to help Gaza, to help the reconstruction of Gaza, and they sit, on the top of the hill. They've got full of tanks there and armored vehicles, watching Kobani falling into ISIS and doing nothing to help the Kurds over there. Now, if I may be a bit cynical, if I would be a bit cynical here, the only option that they will join the fight is if the Kurds will win. Then they will join the fights, because the second priority is not to let the Kurds gain this piece of land in northern Syria.
So what is more important to Turkey? Because as you said, the domestic interests here are really driving, and it's when you see so many major countries coming together for one common cause, it's more exposed what is always the case, which is everybody's acting in their own national interest and their own domestic interest. What is more important to Turkey? Making sure that the Kurds don't get too much power, or defeating the Islamic State?
Defeating Assad. Well,
number one. What's number two?
Number two would be to avoid the next chunk of Kurdish independence be on the account of Turkey. They wouldn't want to have any chance for the Kurdish autonomous state of Iraq to expand into Syria, and from there to Turkey itself. Turkey has been involved in the last 7 years in a undulating peace process with the PKK, which is the allegedly outlawed Kurdish terrorist organization, but they are dealing with them. They're trying to get into a certain peace process. They're not there yet, and now there's another crisis in these negotiations. So if you ask me to number the priorities, number one would be to oust Assad. Number two would be to avoid expansion of the Kurdish autonomous regions around them.
Let's pause on number two for a moment, though, because the Kurds also have a big role in this. The Kurdish forces are playing a very big role on this border, as you mentioned, Kobani, between Syria and Turkey, and in Iraq. The Kurds are already very angry. Am I wrong that Turkey is not helping enough against Islamic State?
Yes, they are. There have been riots last week. Dozens were killed by Turkish security forces in Turkey because of these riots against Turkey not being involved in what's going on in Kobani.
So if Turkey doesn't get involved and angers the Kurds even more, isn't that likely to make the situation between the Kurds and Turkey, the exact situation that they're afraid of, even worse?
Well, apparently they don't see it this way, because they think, and apparently they've been showing it for the last 40 years, that they can contain this uprising amongst the Kurds.
Moving a little bit to Syria, again, there's supposed to be a meeting in Ankara today, I believe, with Turkey about not only using its bases, but about training moderate Syrian rebels, which Turkey has apparently
agreed to, yes.
So they're interested in making some kind of third group to fight, not the Islamic State, not Assad, but a third group of the Syrian people?
This third group is aimed at Assad. They are willing to train them and to arm them in order for them to fight Assad. As I said, Turkey's first priority, and maybe the only priority at the moment, is to oust Assad. It's not realistic, Nurit. I think, I've been claiming, and many in Israel have been claiming for years now, that Assad should be part of the solution and he's not part of the problem, because Assad is a stabilizing factor in this region, which is tearing apart. It's not very ethical. It's
right.
not very. But we shouldn't be emotional. And apparently, the way this rebellion is going on proves that Assad is a stabilizing factor over there. This is the general perception amongst Israeli observers.
So essentially, Bashar al-Assad, whether the West would like to admit it or not, you think maybe the only one who can actually have the power to end the chaos and prevent the division?
Apparently not to end the chaos, because he cannot end, but to rein in. This would be the proper definition, yes.
Arad Nir, thanks very much for this. We'll probably go back to you in a little bit on another subject, but for now, thanks very much. Staying in the Middle East, more or less, just days after Sweden caused a minor diplomatic firestorm by announcing it plans to recognize Palestine as a state, last night British lawmakers voted overwhelmingly in favor of the motion, a non-binding decision, but nonetheless a very important one. The Israeli embassy has responded, emphasizing again the view that this kind of recognition sharply undermines a real negotiated peace deal with concessions. Joining me now from London is our I24 News correspondent there, Jonathan Sachedati. Jonathan, good morning.
Good morning.
So it was said in UK Parliament that this decision is part of a, quote, contribution to securing a negotiated two-state solution, which of course does not seem to be the view of the United States and Israel. What do you think? Is this the view in the UK, that this is the path to a two-state solution?
Well, in fact, that particular section that you quote there is an amendment that was added to the original debate motion. And that amendment was there presumably to make it somewhat easier for MPs who felt that they might be betraying their allegiance to a country which is a strong ally of the UK, Israel, in voting for this motion. So the amendment was proposed by a senior cross-party group of MPs, including Labour's former Foreign Secretary Jack Straw and the Conservatives' Alan Duncan. And that addition of as a contribution to securing a negotiated two-state solution was intended to somehow make sure that this didn't look like a unilateral act. Of course, it doesn't really have that effect, and what it does is create even more confusion in what was already quite a confusing vote. How this is a contribution to a negotiated two-state solution isn't clear, and exactly how this could, in some way, further the peace process, which at the moment is completely stalled, is also not clear. But what we did have was 4 hours of rigorous debate in the House of Commons here in the United Kingdom, resulting in this very strong vote in favour of that motion, which doesn't change any part of UK foreign policy regarding Israel and the Palestinians. That was made perfectly clear by the Prime Minister's spokesman before the vote.
Jonathan, so you mentioned it won't change the government policy, but we knew it was a symbolic vote from the beginning. But how much symbolism does it have? How much power can this vote have? Because the UK is certainly an important country in this greater picture.
One part of what's been going on, obviously, over the decades of this ongoing conflict is that there's a PR war going on top of all the other forms of war that are also part of the conflict itself. And in terms of the PR war, this is significant because the headlines today are that UK lawmakers have backed the recognition of a Palestinian state. Dig a little deeper and you'll see that really it's not quite so simple. Other than the fact that it's non-binding and doesn't change the UK's policy at all, we can also see that of the 649 members of Parliament, only 207 voted for the amended motion. 12 voted against, which means that 363 abstained by not attending, which was the option given to the Labour Party MPs who were pushed by a three-line whip to vote in favour of the motion, but told that if it was against their wishes, they could simply not attend. Similarly, David Cameron, the Prime Minister, didn't attend the debate and didn't vote, and nor did cabinet ministers under his instruction. So it's not exactly clear that even the majority of MPs particularly support this motion. If they had done, they would have turned up to the debate and they would have voted for it.
Jonathan, stay on the line with us for a moment. I just want to go back to you, Arad, for a moment. Though negotiation is clearly essential, at least the U.S. and Israel make it clear that negotiation concessions are essential, Could this be effective, as Sweden and the UK claim, in sort of pushing Israel into a corner to force Israel to negotiate?
Well, the Israeli government claims now and again that this will only harm the process and damage all the efforts to try and reach an agreement, to talk about any agreement, which we are not there yet. I think that the Israeli government is reluctant to reignite these negotiations. If this motion or if this wave will be overwhelming and if it will have some sanctions attached to it, I think that the Israeli government will have no choice but to consider how to deal with it. I'm not vowing that they will necessarily join the negotiating
this
table
current
again.
Israeli government will do it?
This can hurt the Israeli government. And by the way, regarding this non-binding symbolic vote in London last night, well, this is all true, but all those who oppose this idea could have shown and vote against it, which is also a bit of symbolic, the fact that they decided to stay home and not join the debate and not to confront the issue directly.
Right. The question is if not confronting is necessary, it's not necessarily supporting. It's a fine line
No
in between.
doubt, no doubt, but it's not necessarily against it
It's not
either.
against, which is
Yep.
probably the best Israel can hope for at this point. Jonathan, from your view from London, in Israel a lot of times, I can't say the society as a whole, but there is certainly a section that sort of blocks out what the world is saying, that they're always against us, this sort of notion. From your view in London, popular opinion both on the street and in the government, is this something Israel has to pay attention to?
Israel can't help but pay attention to what's going on in the United Kingdom and in other parts of the world, with more and more countries and international bodies bowing to the pressure from the Palestinians to unilaterally recognize a state that doesn't exist yet. Many of the speeches in the House of Commons yesterday in this 4-hour-long debate did in fact admit that there are no borders, there are no organs of state, that really the state that they were recognizing was something that might exist in the future, but they were recognizing it now in principle in order to assist Mahmoud Abbas in his attempt to internationalize the conflict. That is significant, even if it doesn't actually change the UK's official position, which is that it does not yet recognize a Palestinian state. The official government position is still that it can do and will do at a time of its choosing when it feels that it's helpful towards that two-state solution. But yes, of course it's significant. And a country like Britain, which some are suggesting these days punches well above its weight in terms of international geopolitics, a country like Britain having this expression of intention of the will of the majority of the MPs voting last night, even if it doesn't particularly change policy, does show that there is a shift somewhat in public opinion here. Remember that those MPs last night were not thinking quite so much necessarily about Israelis and Palestinians as they were about their own constituents and who votes for them. And those people, they felt, might have been satisfied by this sort of expression of support for a Palestinian state, when actually they knew it would have little or no effect over in the region itself. So again, it's a symbolic act that maybe shows something of a shifting of opinion among voters here in the UK, when politicians feel that this sort of gesture will satisfy them.
Jonathan, you bring up an important point that I've heard a lot of analysts speaking about in the Swedish case as well, that again, we're talking about domestic interest, just like we were discussing a moment ago with the Islamic State group, with the fight against it, that these countries in the end have to answer to their own constituents, to their own elections. How much is what you're talking about, is the Muslim presence in the UK influencing the policy? How much does that drive UK policy in the last several years?
Certainly that's a part of what influences decisions like this, though it's very difficult to attribute decisions and public opinion to specifically Muslim opinion or any other sector of the community here. It is true to say that during Operation Protective Edge and the airstrikes and then ground incursions from Israel into Gaza, there was a swelling of opinion here against Israel, which was driven quite in a large part by the news coverage in the UK, which was extremely negative towards Israel, emphasizing the damage and the loss of life in Gaza rather than some sort of more balanced approach showing the reasons for the attack and the now somewhat clearer ratio of civilian to combatant deaths being actually, in terms of warfare, rather balanced and equal, showing a level of quite targeted attacks on Israel's part. Now, that sort of thing helped public opinion here to swell in one particular way, which was against Israel. And when we see that sort of thing happening in the streets here, people writing to their MPs, there's an enormous support of people for the Palestinian cause in the United Kingdom who will actually get out and vote with their feet, go to rallies, go to protests and write letters. It's hard to know how typical that is of the average Briton. Many people, of course, don't express an opinion on this. But that is more and more visible every day and is presumably part of a more and more well-organized lobby against Israel or in favor of the Palestinians. And that has had this knock-on effect in making MPs here feel that this is the way they need to vote in order to satisfy mainstream public opinion.
Arad, speaking about going forward, can Israel recover from all this damage that Jonathan is talking about that was done in Operation Protective Edge going forward?
Yes, definitely. Reigniting the peace process. I think that negotiations with the Palestinians is in Israel's interest. It hurts Israel to keep it the way it is. I've been speaking to some diplomatic sources in the Prime Minister's office yesterday, last night, and they stressed the fact that they will not negotiate with the Unity Palestinian government because they deal with Hamas, because Hamas is represented there. They are willing, they say that they're willing to negotiate with Abbas, but as long as Abbas adheres to this unity government with Hamas, they will not join the negotiating table, which, if you ask my analysis or my perception, I think it is wrong because, as we know, you have to deal with those that you have a dispute with. And at the moment, the last fight in Gaza was against Hamas, apparently, not against
But the Israeli
Bashar.
government, this one, it seems, will always find a little bit of criteria because of which we cannot negotiate at this moment.
That's our expertise.
Well, John
no
Kerry,
doubt.
at least in Cairo, said he's willing and wants to start another peace process.
I
He's been
salute
here,
him. I salute him
I
for
do
that.
too.
That's
He's an
very
optimistic guy.
courageous out of him. But unfortunately, until there will be a proper program to negotiate on, I don't think that
he
the
can
Americans
come visit here and go to the beach and wait
mind
for
you,
them to
mind
be
you,
ready.
that's his second visit to the region where he did not come to Jerusalem. So maybe
It's
it
a big
shows
move
something.
for him.
Yes.
Jonathan Sashadoti, thanks very much for being with us from London. Arad Nir, thanks very much again.
My
for you.
pleasure.
While this vote we've been discussing was underway in the British Parliament, and after a donor conference in Cairo raised over $5 billion in pledges for rebuilding Gaza, UN Secretary General Ban Ki-moon has been in Israel and the West Bank and is set to travel to Gaza. Let's first hear what the Israeli Prime Minister and the UN Secretary General had to say on Monday. It was a bit tense.
There is no Israeli occupation of Gaza. The root cause of this summer's outburst of violence was Hamas's rocketing of Israeli cities. What is the root cause of Hamas's rocket fire on Israel? It's Hamas's opposition to Israel's very existence. Hamas doesn't give a hoot for the 1967 lines. For them, Israel has no right to live in any border. Hamas rejects our very existence. They're committed to killing every Israeli and every Jew. You just have to read their charter. They say that very plainly. So Hamas is the enemies of all of us who seek peace. And real peace can only be achieved through bilateral negotiations with those who believe in peace.
If conditions in Gaza simply revert to where they were before this escalation, the clock will be reset for more instability, underdevelopment, and conflict. I'm very concerned about the recent announcement of plans to advance settlement in East Jerusalem, which are in clear violation of international law. This does not send the right signals, and I urge the government of Israel to reverse these activities. As you mentioned about this holy site in Jerusalem, and I also said this morning, I'm deeply concerned by repeated provocations at the holy site in Jerusalem. And these only inflame tension and must stop.
With me on the line is I-24 News diplomatic correspondent Tal Shalev. Good morning, Tal.
Good morning, Noit.
So we just heard a little bit of what they had to say. Quite tense, to say the least.
Well, yes, another very tricky visit for the UN Secretary General in Israel. In many ways, the whole visit is defined by both the Gaza rehabilitation efforts and Ban's urging Israel to ease restrictions on the Gaza Strip, and also by his calls to actually renew peace negotiations, followed with, accompanied by very harsh words about the settlement activities and Israel's activities in East Jerusalem. And Netanyahu felt the need to answer Ban's speech at the donors conference the day before, in which he actually blamed the Israeli occupation for the last conflict in Gaza. But it definitely wasn't an easy meeting between those two. Their previous meeting in New York 2 weeks ago was also not very cheerful. They had a row there about the UNRWA commission that Ban wants to launch, and Netanyahu was urging him not to launch this kind of commission. That probably came up in the meeting too, even though it wasn't on camera yesterday.
Tal, what's coming up next? What can we expect from Ban's visit? Because it's not over yet, right?
Well, no, today actually is one of the most interesting days in Ban's visit, because he will be crossing over to Gaza to see in his own eyes what exactly the scope of the destruction and the scope of the reconstruction needs. One of the things that Ban has been trying to promote is the implementation of the trilateral mechanism the UN is trying to establish between Israel, the Palestinian Authority, and the UN for a mechanism that is supposed to supervise materials that enter the Gaza Strip in order to start reconstruction. So one of these things will be to see exactly how things will be on the ground, and he will probably, as we're hearing reports and seeing reports from Gaza, the situation is quite grave, so we can probably expect a few more difficult statements throughout the day.
Tal, one last quick question. Any willingness on the Israeli part to take part in the reconstruction of Gaza? We just saw this conference with Israel not present.
Well, definitely. Israel is very involved in the reconstruction efforts. It didn't take part of the conference because of an Egyptian request. Egypt and the Palestinian Authority were concerned that if Israel would be there, then the Arab states would feel less obliged to don't. And the fact is that they did succeed to gain a record number of funds on Sunday. But Israel on the ground, in reality, is starting to try and implement the reconstruction mechanism in order to ensure some kind of easing on the situation of the Gaza residents.
Thank you very much, Tal Shalev, for being with us. Stay with us. Coming up next, a landmark paper. The Catholic Church takes one step closer to reforming its views on the family. Don't go anywhere. Welcome back to the morning edition. With me now on set is I-24 News senior editor Ruti Sinai. Good morning, Ruti. And of course, Mr. Anthony Grant for a look at all the headlines we may have missed. What do you have?
Good morning, first of all.
Good morning.
Looking lovely in periwinkle.
Thank you. A great word,
yes.
as we've said.
Yeah, great word, great color, matches the sea.
Yes.
The Times of Israel reported yesterday, a little interesting twist here in diplomacy. The French Parliament is to host the Palestinian Unity Government. In the beginning of 2015, the French Foreign Minister Laurent Fabius has announced, and
this is assuming there will be a Palestinian Unity Government.
Assuming there will be, and also
and the French Parliament.
Yes.
And the French Parliament, and the fact that since 2003, the European Union has designated Hamas as a terrorist group. So how is that going to jibe with the diplomatic structure? Just a detail.
Details.
Yeah, to be resolved, right? So, interesting news from France.
Well, so they have a little while to plan to see how things pan out.
A little while,
see how they deal with that.
Maybe they'll take their cue from the British. I don't know. We'll see.
Yeah, from last night.
Yeah. Yahoo News, an AP report, interesting headline, but regarding Saudi Arabia. According to this headline, Iran must withdraw quote-unquote occupying forces from Syria. This is Saudi Foreign Minister Prince Saud al-Faisal said Monday after talks with his German counterpart. Interesting language coming from the Saudis.
There was a lot of talk of a closening between Iran and Saudi Arabia in the last few
It
months.
might be
doesn't
cosmetic.
Really, doesn't really suggest that that's the case.
They are far apart on many issues. They basically, this foreign minister is saying that he's calling the Iranian forces in Syria occupying forces and that they need to go.
And
so
I suppose
again,
a group like the Islamic State isn't enough to bring two historic arch rivals together and hug each other and work together.
Or if it is, not yet. I guess it's too early in the game for that. So we'll see if there's an Iranian reaction to that statement the coming days. In other Saudi news, Saudi billionaire Prince Al Walid has come to the rescue of Euro Disney.
Oh.
Yeah.
This is what happens when you have so much money you don't know what
to do with it. Yeah. Actually,
we'll rescue Euro Disney.
Yeah, and who knew? I mean, Disneyland Paris, actually, I think it's called these days, which, of course, was originally billed by a leading French critic as a cultural Chernobyl. Whether or not you agree with that depends how French you are, I guess.
Cultural Chernobyl, I like that.
Yeah, that was like the byword for this place for years.
Yeah.
It seems to make more sense, I think, in California than France, the Disney concept.
A
But
little
anyway.
more. And Orlando. Yeah.
And Orlando and all that. But anyway,
They're having actually an economic meltdown, so it's not so far-fetched.
True.
Indeed.
Euro Disney.
Well, anyway, this guy is
fits well with Europe then.
Yeah. Saudi prince to the rescue, and he's going to make sure that people can get all of their Mickey that they need.
I wonder if we can just maybe register some requests with them if they're fixing Euro Disney. Maybe
Fix,
the average man can just
my apartment,
request.
our kitchen,
I have a lot of
I don't know.
Like,
the Middle
far less
East.
than $1 billion.
Just write that check. On a more serious note, interesting story in Hurriyet, one of the leading Turkish newspapers, which talks about this student, Nejat Agir Nasli, a student of the prestigious Bosphorus University who was killed while fighting what they call ISIL in the headline. And he was fighting alongside Kurdish forces against militants of the so-called Islamic State. And interestingly, the paper is picking up on a Turk, basically, who was basically killed in the fierce fighting there. And it shows that, we talk about this contentious issue of boots on the ground and this and that. And for Turkey, they're drawing attention to one individual who joined the fight there. So it speaks to I think, some of the concern that, and the trepidation is the word I'm looking for, that Turks might have as far as implicating their ground forces, even though this guy did it sort of non-officially. Yeah.
But he himself was a Kurd, or?
He was sympathizing with the Kurdish cause.
Which is already a problem for the Turkish government.
Yeah.
He actually changed his name to an Armenian name to sort of have more solidarity with
It's amazing
that
how,
kind of
though, you
cause.
have all around, from the U.S. and Europe and Turkey, clearly, you have people who have relatively good lives. I mean, they're studying, they're socioeconomic, fair socioeconomic level that are still dropping everything.
It kind of goes back to the old cliche of, sort of young, impressionable, sort of rebellious male youth. I mean, that's
and
kind
female.
of and female too. I mean, less so, but increasingly so.
There's a female fighter pilot or something, right?
The UAE. Yeah. Well, she's the one who's going to prevent all these folks from getting to
At least there's
Virgin
one
Heaven.
Good.
Okay, well.
On that note.
On that note, the French, on a sort of semi-serious note, a British member of Parliament has called on the French army to protect passengers crossing the Channel from Calais over to Britain. Why? Because there's apparently something like now upwards of 2,500 illegal migrants in Calais that are coming from basically a lot from the Middle East and in Africa. And the French police actually went on strike yesterday to protest the fact that they don't think that they can handle the situation.
That they shouldn't have to do it.
And the British are concerned about the security of passengers on the boats that go across. And they're saying that at least one parliamentarians saying that they should call in the army if necessary to protect passengers. So it's a bit of a political football. Who's managing the illegal immigration situation?
Italy has been pretty upset because they've been bearing a lot of the brunt of the migrants getting to their coast. They're kind of they have their
they have the
Coast Guard
logistical and sea
dealing with
issues,
it.
but in Calais, and actually I've been more than once. This is where actually people end up after they've taken those horrible boat rides and all that, and they really don't know quite what to do with the situation.
Yeah, the kind of
And Britain, of course, political issue there because of the generous welfare state attracting the migrants and what to do about that. So between Britain and France,
what do you do with them?
Yeah, right now they just kind of sit there and wait. Also in European news, interesting fun headline from Bloomberg: Italy is now on sale.
Oh,
yeah,
I'll buy.
Yeah, to Chinese investors. There's apparently this website called Vendere ai Cinesi, which basically means sell to the Chinese. And this is a place for Italian companies to basically make themselves look attractive to Chinese investors because after 6 years of dealing with the recessionary issues, the Italians have
with the Italian government.
The Italian government, which is trying to make fiscal amends but not making many inroads. The Chinese are kind of snapping up things in Italy apace, and they're actually being encouraged to do so. So it's interesting in terms of financial repercussions and cultural repercussions.
Cuisine, can you think of fusion?
Fusion, now that's where it could get really interesting.
Well,
pasta was invented by the Chinese.
True.
So maybe it's a match made in
Yet
heaven.
they should not get involved in the Italian food. If it ain't broke, don't fix it.
I agree. Yeah, I hear. Yeah, I would agree with that.
Okay, so you have China and Italy and Saudi Arabia and Euro Disney. What else?
It's crazy. And I wanted to follow up actually on another story. We mentioned yesterday some big archaeological find in Greece.
Right.
The page just keeps turning because now at this site called Amphipolis, which is sort of the archaeological star attraction in Greece these days, a mosaic has been unearthed dating from 300 BC. And it's been captivating people in Greece as they're watching these discoveries being made almost day by day at this tomb area. And apparently it's of the god Hermes. It's 4.5 meters wide. It's in almost perfect condition. It was just sitting there for all this time. And I think this is going to be shaping up to be a major tourist attraction maybe, a couple of years from now. But right now it's really riveting the media broadcast and print all over Greece. So
tomorrow you can talk about the Viking treasure found in Scotland. It's amazing.
Oh,
yeah.
Okay.
Bring it for tomorrow morning.
All right.
You have to have an archaeological headline.
Yeah. I mean, it's the coolest stuff, and I got to check out the Scottish stuff absolutely. And did you hear about Apple Pay? That is making some headlines as well.
Oh, a credit new way to pay with
the
your
rumors
phone.
are swirling. So that's why Time has 3 things to know about the rumored launch date of Apple Pay, which is the smartphone service that aims to replace wallets. Basically, this could be a big deal.
On one hand, I feel like this is brilliant and completely inevitable in terms of the progression of our lives. On the other hand, we already have our entire lives are in our phones. So now you have all your contacts, all your information, all of your personal everything, plus your credit card.
Backup.
Yeah. It's
and if it's stolen, I'm guessing Apple has a good backup plan for that.
Well, based on the success of iCloud and Photos, I don't know. I'm a little bit nervous, but it's just a rumor at this point. But it could be launching Saturday.
So maybe let other people try it out first.
Let them try it first, and then they can get back to us.
Anthony, you'll stay with us for a little bit, but thank you very much for the headline.
See you.
Moving now to the Catholic Church, the Vatican seems to be moving another step closer to a shift, some kind of shift, in how the Church views family. A landmark review of Catholic teaching on family has suggested a new openness to cohabitation, divorce, and gay marriage. With me now is senior I-24 News editor Ruti Sinai. Again, Ruti, good morning.
Good morning.
So is the Vatican finally catching up to modern reality?
It would seem, yeah. Let's remember this Pope, Francis I, was the first to use the word gay publicly. His
That's
predecessor.
Incredible. Just for a moment, saying the word was already a step forward.
Yeah. Well, he comes from South America. You have to kind of figure that out.
They're a little more relaxed.
Yeah, definitely relaxed. So, look, here's what's going on. He's convened. I mean, they've obviously realized that the flock is moving away. He himself commissioned a survey basically to see and try and see to what extent the followers of the Catholic Church actually adhere to its teachings. And the results were, as to be expected. They don't.
So in the end, you think this is kind of a way to bring back the Catholics who have
absolutely.
migrated away?
Absolutely. So they're basically saying, we're not. I mean, this synod, this gathering of bishops, 200 bishops from around the world who are, going over the Catholic Church's teachings on family, divorce, contraception, communion for divorcees, etc. So they put out an interim report of their meeting. They've got another week to go on this get-together. And what they're saying essentially is, we're not going to cast them away. We're not going to say anymore they're sinners and we don't want them.
Even more, there was something I saw that in the paper they said, quote, homosexuals have gifts and qualities to offer to the Christian community. Are we capable of welcoming these people, guaranteeing to them a fraternal space in our community? So not only, okay, maybe we'll accept them, but maybe they can actually contribute to our community. And it seems a self-reflection. I feel like the bottom line here is self-reflection, self-criticism.
Yeah, I don't think what they're saying essentially is they're not going to change the teachings. But, they're still going to say that it's wrong, basically. But they are willing to see
Anthony, I hear you laughing. I just have to,
well,
I have to allow a little bit of cynicism.
It's incremental change, isn't it?
We're
talking about the
baby
Vatican
steps.
here.
Yeah, absolutely.
Baby Pope steps.
Gradual, very,
well, on
very
that note,
gradual.
though, when Pope Francis began, I guess somewhere around 18 months ago, there was a lot of discussion of him being the one who will reform the Catholic Church, and a lot of statements that were relatively guarded, but were still viewed as a very big deal for the Catholic Church. Do you think, so long after now, when we kind of see a little more of what his papacy is like, that he is...
Absolutely. Although there's a real push and pull. I mean, he's definitely pulling, a certain direction, and he's got a lot of backing. It's not just he, but there are conservative groups who really don't like this, and they've come out, furious about this paper.
Right.
That's
I wonder really then how much, on one hand, the Vatican is clearly the beacon of the Catholic Church and extremely important. On the other hand, how much will it take for a Vatican decision to kind of make its way
to trickle down,
to really make a change in the Catholic
Church?
Years.
Yeah. I mean, it's definitely. They themselves are talking about the principle of graduality, nothing made no earth. I mean, well, actually, one of the bishops there talked about a pastoral earthquake.
Right.
But others are kind of more cautionary. It's really, I mean, the church throughout its existence has had these push and pull kind of, between more progressive forces and more conservative forces. And I
Maybe
don't
it's
see
reached
that
a little
that
bit of a
changing.
boiling point.
I think so, because it's kind of, it's kind of the realization that if they don't do something, they really will lose. I mean, they have already lost, and they will lose, many more.
Lose their audience.
And so, I think it just makes all the sense in the world, at least cosmetically, even if we're not going to change the teachings, to say, we're not going to kick you out. I mean, as you mentioned, you have something to contribute. There's this whole issue, for instance, of women who are divorced and remarried, but who can't take communion.
Right, because they didn't get it annulled or by the Catholic Church.
But it's just ridiculous because, you look at criminals, for instance, murderers who've atoned for the sins, they can take communion. Communion, so being the most sacred rite of the church. So and divorcees can't. So this is one of the things that perhaps
divorce is worse than being a criminal.
I guess so, in the eyes of the church.
I never thought of it that way.
In the eyes of the church, yeah.
I just thinking of you, Anthony, because there's something else that they're kind of the explanation. They say theologically, this is also a little bit of cynicism in terms of how far this is going to go. But they're sort of saying that it's the principle of graduality. So it's moving people slowly towards their teaching to help gradually pull people more to conform to the Catholic Church teaching. But hopefully the teaching
That's a big thing for them in a way, to as Ruti was saying, I mean, just the fact that they're speaking about this openly. So maybe it's a room
They've also brought in people to testify, about Catholic
we'll
family life.
see soon, hopefully a good change forward. Anthony Grant and Ruti Sinai, thank you very much for being with me. And coming up next, the Letters campaign on Facebook against the silencing of rape victims. Stay with us. First, we'll send you back to the news desk for some more of the morning headlines. Welcome back. It's still Tuesday, October 14th, 2014. This is still the morning edition on I-24 News. Thanks for staying with us. Now to Facebook. Facebook has recently been filled with letters instead of people's profile pictures. It's all part of one woman's Letters campaign. Our next guest is behind it and has a very strong personal story attached to it. Shani Shtalri joins me. Thank you very much, Shani, for being with me.
Thank you for having me.
So first, explain the concept of letters. What does letters mean in this campaign?
It began with something else. A friend of mine wrote, posted something about sexual assaults, and then a woman commented and said something like that women sometimes are to blame because they're dressed, with
provocatively.
Yeah. And I was really, really mad at the comment. And then I decided to, write my own story. I had no idea that it's going to get this amount of echo. I had 13,500
wow.
likes on my page.
It really struck
3,000
a chord.
people, how do you say that? They posted it on their page. Shared it, that's it. And it was really a lot of, I started receiving many, many messages, private messages from victims telling their own stories. And then 2 days later, I talked to another friend of mine, and I told him I'm sick of the letters. Anyone who's a victim and is interviewed, her face is
blurred.
Blurred. Her voice is distorted, and she hides behind a letter. And I can understand the fact, but I'm still it's the only crime where the victims are ashamed.
Where it shows where you have a blurred face, and a letter it shows the victim as if they're the criminal.
And then I decided that, he told me, change your profile picture to a letter, ask people to do the same. And I said, okay. And I did it, and I wrote something, long. And I asked people to do the same, and I said it would be really amazing to see a lot of letters so people would understand the extent of the phenomena of sexual assaults and rapes. And I asked people that, know a certain victim, or if they're a victim themselves, or if they know certain victims, out of being for the victims, to change to a letter.
Do you have a little bit of what you wrote? I'd love to hear
a
little of what you wrote.
Okay. The first post about my own experience. I was 19 when I thought my parents would find my dead body in a stranger's bed. I was 19 when he raped me. I was 19 when he hit me hard on my stomach and legs. I was 19 when I took a shower for 5 hours. I was 19 when I sat with my mom for breakfast wearing blues and reds beneath my uniform. I was 19 when on the following day I went to the army base counselor crying for help. I was 19 when he told me to shut up. Different times. I was 19 and I closed my mouth. I was 19 when 2 days after the rape I left home not being able to tell my parents. I was 21 when I decided to deal with it, to start healing myself, and went to a psychologist. I was 31 when I volunteered in Breaking the Silence and helped girls who were victims of sexual assaults and rape. Today I'm 40. The reds and blues have long disappeared. I'm a woman blessed with a happy and full life filled with love. My inner scars are quiet, though existing. They are a part of me forever. Once, when I used to write about my experience, my hands were shaking. The exposure, exposing my wounds. Today I have no shame. The only ones who should be ashamed are the attackers.
Very, very powerful. I can see why it spread across Facebook. What brought you go through the sort of timeline, and which really shows that after sexual assault, it's not a year, it's not 2 years.
No,
it's
not.
a very, very long process. Did you feel that sort of shame in the beginning, and what brought you to,
I didn't
do
even
this?
tell my mother for 2 years.
Wow.
And then I told her because I just needed money to see a shrink. And it wasn't a real conversation. It was something happened to me. It took me many years to, say it out loud. It took me many years to even say the word rape, because even when I used to talk about it, I didn't say I was raped, because it's really...
It has connotations that shouldn't be there.
It's really, really difficult to face yourself with what happened to you. And this is what I'm aiming. It's here in Israel, what I feel is that penalty-wise, rapists, sexual attackers they're freed like after 5 years in prison. So if a woman or a man, by the way, I got a lot of, men victims, a lot of messages from men.
I would guess maybe, of course it's a guess, but that even for men it might even be more taboo.
I think you're right.
Because nobody discusses.
I think you're right, and I can tell you this. Like, I think in the past week and a half, I got something like 350 personal stories, like messages. Wow. 80 of them were men mostly in a younger age. And also, I talked to a male victim, and he said, I was walking outside the police station for 4 hours, like scared to walk in and say what happened to me. When he walked in, the person that received him, she asked him, what happened? Why are you here? And he said, I want to report a rape. And she asked him, did you rape someone?
Wow.
And he just turned around and left. And he told me that after 20 years, he never said.
For men, it might be even more behind for women in terms of the acceptance.
I think you're right. I don't want to say something that I don't know,
right.
But I think you're right out of what I read. And it's like, we live in 2014. A 65-year-old woman writes to me. She's been married for 40 years. She hasn't told her husband about her rape when she was 16. So many victims told, in personal messages for the first time in their life. And after the Letters campaign, and after they saw so many people and they understood that they are not alone and that they are hugged, I got a lot of messages returning to me and saying, I told my mother for the first time, I told my friends for the first time, and it's like, I want to get rid of the shame, because we're not to blame. We're the victims of a crime. The criminals should be ashamed and should be locked. And I really...
How do you feel after this very long process, after more than a decade of going through that personal process, like these people who saw your campaign and who made the move themselves? How do you feel after taking it public and after getting these reactions, in terms of your personal experience, your story?
I think that the strongest word for me now is humbled. I feel humbled. That's... I feel like a week and a half ago, my life changed. And every personal story that I read, I sit with myself and they tell me that. And I feel
that they're sharing something like that.
It's amazing. I feel like I've just set put on my journey here in life, and this is what I'm supposed to do. And I know how to make a lot of noise, and I'm not going to rest until things change here.
It needs a lot of people to make a lot of noise,
Yeah.
What's amazing, obviously, about social media is you can be here in Israel, and you can reach people from all corners of the earth with this very common story. Did you see a sort of difference in the responses, in the comments, and the experiences of people in different places around the world, or is this a sort of common shared...
First of all, it's a common shared phenomena. I think the difference here, I know that there are a lot of campaigns in the U.S. that I saw actors participating and, calling people to break the silence and but here, I don't think there was a victim who faced the camera and said, listen, I'm a victim, I'm a strong victim, and I want you to do this, I want you to, take this action with me and let's do something here. I got a few responses from abroad, from Australia, from different places, and I think that people are not aware of this campaign and everything that's going on, so it's just the beginning.
Well, hopefully this pushes it forward, because it's really wonderful. Really very, very important what you're doing.
Thank you.
Shani, thanks very much for being with me. Thanks very much, and much luck in this campaign. I hope it spreads much more.
Thank you very much.
Now a bit of a sharp transition to a little bit of light. What else is on the web aside from this very important Facebook campaign? Anthony Grant joins me again this morning. Good morning, Anthony.
Welcome good morning back. Again. Thank you. I'm of the sort of internet school where I don't like watching people's cat videos and this little video and that, but...
I support that.
Yeah, thank you very much, although nothing against cats. But yesterday I was watching a little video clip which was really powerful because it just shows someone, sort of jumping into a rooftop pool in Malaysia from a really huge skyscraper, and I was watching as the views just kept growing and growing. We can take a little clip.
Wow.
Take a little look. walk into a party.
May I
right?
ask
Yeah.
what exactly he was attached to?
I have no idea. The more I
Okay.
tried to find out, the less I knew. You know?
As often happens with things on the internet.
Yes, but just really cool, like out of a Bond movie. So
Wow.
anyway.
Good thing you made it into the pool.
Yeah, it's still
I'm
summer
glad it had a
somewhere,
good
right?
ending.
Yeah.
Could've gone
Summer some places, but it's Halloween season in the United
Right.
States. Yes, coming up in 2 weeks or so. So some controversies already starting because now people are putting really graphic displays in their yards of zombies and vampires and
Scaring the children
it's
away.
scaring. Here in Minneapolis, of all places, news sources asking, is this display scaring the kids too much? And it begs the question, how much is too much when it comes to Halloween displays?
And even Halloween is now controversial.
Even Halloween is controversial, but it's
But it's like what we were talking about yesterday. You're always pushing the limit more and more. The movie's pushing the limit more and more.
Exactly.
I guess with Halloween, it's the same thing. Costumes.
But when you think about it, imagine if somewhere in, say, I don't know, France or even the Middle East, that people started hanging vampire effigies in their yard. It would cause
It would be a
bit
little
of
strange.
A little strange. In the U.S.
When you say it that way.
Yeah. So
It does seem a little odd.
cultural differences.
There's some to be said about female costumes in Halloween also, but we'll leave that aside
We'll leave
for
that.
now.
But the things do get very theatrical. Interesting headline from Mediaite on a totally different note. Paul Krugman, who many people love his work in the New York Times, has come out and called Obama one of the most consequential presidents in modern history.
Huh.
He was promptly mocked.
No.
Now, we could go off on this for hours, but it is interesting to see.
What is his argument, or just one of them?
That his policy changes have been more consequential than, say, anything that Ronald Reagan did,
Well,
it's
does consequential sort of mean? Well, can we say it's having consequences? That's it.
Yeah.
So
I mean, and I guess
everything is.
Consequences.
It could be good or bad.
Yeah. You could say that lack of action can lead to consequences, but that wouldn't make you consequential. It would make you inconsequential. But all of these permutations sort of contributed to the fact that his comments, grabbed a couple headlines.
Yeah.
Interesting stuff there on the political
Not an
front.
easy time. For Obama.
Culturally speaking, we have Beyonce and Jay-Z in the Louvre.
Let me see.
A little bit of controversy here because they had a private tour.
I was going to say, there's no way you get that close to the Mona Lisa
first of all,
unless you're shut down the museum.
This photo is like American Gothic, but overdrive. It's a little problematic because should the Louvre be cordoned off just for pop royalty? Now, apparently they paid the staff to give them this private tour. But, I think it shows that maybe there are some people out there that might be more deserving of a private Louvre
They
tour.
also, if I remember correctly, made a lot of buzz and got a lot of criticism in New York when she gave birth, and they just shut down the entire hospital or cordoned off a wing of the hospital.
Yeah.
But the Mona Lisa, I mean, you can't get within 6 meters of it.
And the thing is this. To single out the Mona Lisa and for a photo like that out of all of the artwork in the Louvre, it's
a little predictable.
It's a little bit,
Yeah.
I mean, come on.
And I think she's aiming for the Mona Lisa smile there in that picture. If I can say so.
No,
I think
Jay-Z
she did a
is.
pretty good job.
Yeah, but the Mona Lisa, it's quite a small painting,
It is.
Yeah.
It's surprising to see
Not
it.
that I've ever been up that close. I'm not Beyonce or Jay-Z. But anyway.
Well, we can't all be.
They're house hunting in Paris, by the way. So it all ties in with that. So. Yeah, going French. Going crazy is what happened at a Florida strip club where police have charged a strip club manager and 2 bouncers for beating a tourist. Now, it might just be another day at the beach in Florida, so to speak, but in Daytona Beach, actually.
Just an average Tuesday.
Yeah, an average Tuesday, a guy from Omaha, Nebraska, not getting a very good impression of the Sunshine State. So I don't know what people were smoking there, but I hope it wasn't marijuana, because that's what's happening. You know where marijuana is showing up? In Hermes Birkin bags.
What?
Well, the scent of it. According to this headline.
In the actual bag itself?
Well, the famous Birkin bag?
Of course.
Which it costs like $20,000.
The extremely unaffordable, absurdly expensive.
It's only 20
Birkin
grand,
bag.
Yeah.
I'll buy 2 different kinds.
Well, they look cool if you like that kind of look.
Say their Birkin bags smell
like marijuana. Yeah, the web forums are apparently abuzz with the complaints.
Maybe that's why they're so expensive.
Well, no. Pot is democratized now in many
cheap.
places.
Okay.
It's cheap. But apparently
I'm
it was...
clearly not, up on the prices.
And neither am I, but apparently it was a badly tanned batch of leather from a supplier. And so people are allowed to, I guess, have their bags sent back to Paris to be re-leathered.
It's a very expensive return.
Yeah.
I have to say.
Yeah.
But I suppose they can absorb it, Hermes, if they're charging $20,000 back.
Not the greatest PR for Hermes,
No.
though, unless you're some kind of pop royalty and you like that scent in your handbag.
Anthony, I wish we had more time, as usual, but thank you very much.
Thank you very
Bringing
much.
a little light to our morning in Birkin bags that smell like marijuana.
Right.
And
See you
coming up, Lena Dunham's next big project, a PG-13 medieval movie. We'll explain. Stay with us. We'll send you back to the news desk for some more of this morning headlines. Don't go anywhere. Welcome back to the morning edition here at I-24 News. Now for a little break from the Islamic State group and from the Palestinian-Israeli conflict and so on and so on. A little pop culture. With me is Ynet America journalist Roni Stav. Good morning,
Good
Roni.
morning. From the Palestinians to
Yes.
Lena Dunham.
Yes.
That's how we're
Sharp
gonna
transition,
roll this
as
morning,
always.
apparently. So Lena Dunham discussed a bunch of issues in the 15th annual New Yorker Festival on Friday night, and one of them was her aspiration to create a movie out of Karen Cushman's Catherine Cold Birdie. It's a young adult book that she has been talking about the fact that even though it's a children's book, it really has everything.
Set in the 1200s?
Yeah, it's in the 1200s, 1290. It's a girl coming of age in England. Basically, she's 12, she's getting her period, and her father tells her, you need to get married. And then everything that is going
That
on
sounds
after
like
this
Lena
moment.
Dunham.
Yeah, that
appropriate.
sounds right her alley. And she is talking about it. She's saying it's hyper-realistic and really pretty, and it's full of incest and beating, but it's a child's story. And I've been obsessed with it since I was a kid. So it looks like that's one of the
Her
projects
next
that
thing.
she's
Well,
gonna.
everything she does seems to turn to gold, to television gold.
Absolutely.
So I'm sure she'll do well.
She is now promoting her new book, Not That Kind of Girl. It is #1 on USA Today's book list. She got 3.5 million in advance. Sorry.
Wow, I keep meaning to read that book.
I know. It's she's talking about the fact that she keeps on that idea, that road of feminism and women coming of age, and she just wanna keep on with that. I guess that's
She's been a great beacon for that. And girls, just to have this very, I mean, it's obvious, but this very sort of real character that doesn't care, for lack of...
Absolutely.
Can't
She's
say it
so
another way.
refreshing. Yeah, she was talking about the fact that this is the first time she's going to have to do a research that is not going to a diner.
That's not going to be based on her own life.
Yes, exactly.
Living in
Not
in
just
a box
having
in New
her
York.
French fries at 2 a.m. But she is saying that it's something that she feels very strongly about. She is planning on doing it with a casual romance that is her production company, with Girls executive producer Jenny Kunner. She didn't mention a timeline as to when this is going to happen, but looks like this is one of the things that she's
And a production company. Kind of makes me feel like an underachiever, this girl. But
well, it's
but
Lena
she's great.
Dunham. She's like, oh yeah, I'll just do this and I'll just do that. And it is an interesting momentum for her to talk about it, because we have been seeing it went viral over the web, that we've seen the fake blog of the 12-year-old Norwegian
Right.
Thea that has been mentioning that she is very excited for her wedding with the 37-year-old man that she was.
Timely.
Yes, absolutely. And. But it was a fake blog. It got 500,000 views before people understood that this is actually an
wasn't real.
initiative of Plan Norway that is part of Plan International, that is an organization that works to protect the rights of children. And it brought
Very
a lot of
effective
awareness
campaign.
to... Yeah, absolutely. It brought a lot of awareness. And supporters can donate to Plan or sponsor a child to help protect children from not being children anymore. So it is, I don't know, this whole, it's been a week, and with the Nobel Prize, it's been
circle,
a lot of,
Malala winning.
absolutely, a lot of children awareness.
Well, she seems, Lena Dunham seems to tap into the zone of her generation for each step forward, so I'm sure she'll be on top.
Yeah, she's okay. She's okay.
Yeah, she's okay.
Yeah,
she's all right.
She's
doing okay. She'll
fine.
have a good future.
She's fine. Yeah.
What else?
And from Lena Dunham to the Flaming Lips, looks like the long-awaited Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band All-Stars tribute with a little help from my friends. That's the name they have chosen.
Fuentes with a W.
Fuentes with a W. With a W. It's gonna finally arrive on October 28th. And yesterday, Wayne Coyle shared the full details on the Pledge music page. They showed the artwork and the covers that is by the artist Oliver Hibbert. I don't know. I'm not a big fan of the art and the video clips. It was just a little too Lucy in the Sky with Diamonds to me. But
when is it coming out?
28th.
Okay.
Yes, so that's exciting. There's a lot of really exciting collaborations. Miley Cyrus, My Morning Jacket, Tegan and Sarah Moby.
Everywhere.
Miley Cyrus is actually doing Lucy in the Sky.
I shouldn't say anything about Miley Cyrus because I could offend people.
I think that's part of the. I think that's what she does. She's just there for us to offend her and talk about her
well, with
generation.
Her the tongue thing, you know.
The tongue thing is very hard.
Makes sense.
But you know, it's really interesting because she is doing really respected collaborations. You know, there's the whole persona, but whoever did this full
but it's very
makeover,
well planned.
Yes,
it's
absolutely. Someone
reckless,
will learn this major makeover, PR, business plan.
I'm sure someone like that, you have to think every move, everything is planned.
Absolutely, absolutely. And
nothing
actually,
is just, no recklessness is not actually planned recklessness.
Oh,
sure.
nothing is. I don't think there's anything reckless about anything that she is doing. Even with this, last week there was an article about the fact that she had a new tattoo with a little help for my friends, and everyone was like, what is wrong with you? Why are you doing this tattoo? And I was like, oh, okay, she is, promoting on her body, I guess, this new album.
It's the best way.
Of course, I mean, I have I-24 right on my forehead. That's my.
What else in music?
Today.
There's some other big stuff in music.
Yes, the American Music Award has announced its nominees for the 42nd annual ceremony that is set to air live from Nokia Theater in Los Angeles on Sunday, November 23rd. And Iggy Azalea leads the chart with 6 nominations. Wow. Yeah, it's.
There's always every year, I guess, there's one kind of surprising new hit that sweeps everything.
Absolutely. She is, it's one of the nominations that she is being nominated for is Artist of the Year and Single of the Year. So it's pretty, it's really well-established categories.
And she's also doing a lot of collaborations. Big collaborations.
Yeah, she is everywhere. She's kind of the it girl right now, and looks like the AMA knows it more than anyone else.
And anyone else come on top? Out on top
no, she's on top, and actually in the MTV Music Award, she's on top as well, tying Beyonce. So if you're in the same if you're in the same frame as Beyonce, I guess you're doing quite all right.
She'll be okay also.
Yeah.
I guess we've established Miley Cyrus, Lena Dunham, they're all
gonna be okay.
They're all gonna be okay.
They can have their morning coffee and be like, I'm fine.
Relax.
For today.
The rest of us might need to step it up a little bit.
Maybe just a notch.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Merav now. Merav Savio joins us for sports.
Good morning.
Good morning from the Sports Magazine. Now, you to the media gift that keeps on giving, Oscar Pistorius.
And it's still giving. We're not done just yet. Yesterday gave a lot, and we got a lot of reactions to it. The sentencing started yesterday.
When is it?
It's still continuing.
Like so
the judge is also going to hear from the defense and from the prosecution, and they could each take up to a day just to talk to her, each one of them. So it may end today, it may end tomorrow, it may end next week. We don't know. We're all waiting. Oscar Pistorius is waiting to hear what's going to happen to him.
Yeah, I think
because with culpable homicide, it can be anything from throwing the case out the window to 15 years in jail.
I read somewhere that there's proposals for cleaning a museum or something.
Yeah,
like
so that's one
as
of
punishment.
It's an officer. He is kind of like he's a worker of the state, and he came on yesterday and he said, Oscar Pistorius was cooperative this entire time, and maybe he shouldn't be sent to jail. He should get 3 years of community service and house arrest, and that blew up.
Wow.
The prosecution said this is unbelievable, this is inappropriate. Everywhere, if you followed it on Twitter, people were reacting every place saying, you can't do this. I mean, he killed his girlfriend. It may be culpable homicide and not premeditated, as the judge said that she doesn't think that she believed that he really thought she was an intruder in his house. But everybody's arguing
she was still killed.
Yeah, she was still
Where's
killed.
her family in all of this? Have
So
they
her
been
family
sort of present?
they're still present at the sentencing, and yesterday they also came out and spoke against the idea of community service and just house arrest for 3 years. But we're hearing them say, and also yesterday we heard from his psychologist who called him a broken man, said he's been through enough, that they've spent sessions where he just cries in her arms. So they're all coming out and they're trying to help him, saying he's already been through enough. He has post-traumatic stress disorder.
But at this point, if it's sort of like the pity card that someone is playing, or if it's
I think
real
that's
and
what
justified.
I don't know if it's real and justified, but it seems that's where they're going. Whether or not it's real or they're making it up, they're going to play the pity card. That's what it seems like. And another thing that has come up over the past 24 hours that maybe we didn't think of before is we were always saying, we really hope he gets convicted to show that the courts really are working properly and he shouldn't get off because he's a star and because he's a household name. But we didn't think about the fact that he is a double amputee. And that's something that they will be looking at with sentencing him, is that South African jails are known for being very dangerous. And that if he's a double amputee, how would life be like for him in there? Will he be able to survive it? Will it be harsher for him than any other regular man who is fully, who has
sort of
both his
defend
legs, who can
himself
defend
fully.
himself? So that's another thing they will be looking at when the judge does decide on his sentencing. But as of right now, it seems like the prosecution is pushing for the 15 years in jail.
Wow.
They don't think that the judge is going to go
Unlikely,
that heavy on him. We already saw she's kind of, I don't know if she took pity or really does believe that he thought it was an intruder by calling it culpable homicide, which is our version of manslaughter known in other countries.
Well,
but
if he did, and that if what they've decided is true and he thought it was an intruder, you'd think that not that this is what the sentence has to be, but just living with yourself after that is the most punishment that he'll ever get.
And that's what the defense is arguing, and that's what this employee of the state came in yesterday saying he's already been broken down. You see it on him every time he enters the courtroom. He's been crying in his psychologist's arms. The psychologist talking about his post-traumatic stress disorder. He's been through a lot. Then maybe all he should do is community service, cleaning museums, like you said, and be on house arrest for 3 years. And you've been hearing different reactions from people in Pretoria and South Africa, some saying, yeah, that's enough for him, look what he's been through, and others saying, at the end of the day, he killed her.
Right.
He should serve like any
Everybody
other man
has an
would
opinion
serve.
there about it. Well, Milav, I've made it somehow through almost 3 decades in the United States without knowing much about baseball. So you'll have
It's
to tell
time
me.
to learn, because the Kansas City
I think it's
Royals are
time.
doing something that we haven't seen in a really long time. They were supposed to play Game 3 of the ALCS last night. It was postponed due to rain, which is something that could come out against them at the end of the day.
Morale,
because they've been
sort of.
not morale, but momentum. They have won 6 straight in the postseason. I don't remember last time a team did that. And this is a team that hasn't been to the postseason since 1985.
Wow. So a lot of pressure.
A lot of pressure. And even when they got to the postseason and they won the wild card, I still wasn't convinced. I was like, well, it's the Kansas City Royals. They're going to mess up at some point. And they kept winning. And they won 4 extra inning games and pushing it and winning in the 9th inning and doing all the scrappy baseball things that we haven't seen in a really long time. Stealing bases. Their pitching has come out better than before. They were the last in home runs throughout the season, and all of a sudden they're knocking it out of the park everywhere. And now they've got this rain postponement. And that can mess with your momentum for several different reasons, especially in baseball, because it's all about rotations when it comes to pitching, and pitchers are used to having 5 days off, and now there's an extra day off, so do you bench one of your pitchers so that you continue with your regular rotation? And there's so many questions coming in, and how both teams are going to face this. They're right now best of 7, they're leading 2-0. And in history, it favors teams who win 2-0.
I bet they're a little bit superstitious, too.
Absolutely,
teams,
especially baseball
every
teams are
little thing
very,
that happens on the way to the
very
win.
superstitious. And it's funny that you bring that up, because in this postseason so far, every time the Kansas City Royals played at home, or almost every single time, it rained right after the game. And this time,
So what does it mean this time?
postponed the game. So
Okay.
all these different questions are coming up about whether they can do this. But regardless, they've had an incredible postseason so far for a team that isn't that good. If you look at their payroll, they're nowhere near the top of, you've got the Yankees, you've got the Angels, all these teams who are paying millions and millions of dollars for the stars, for the household names. Kansas City Royals don't have that. and they're still doing something that the rest of these teams couldn't do. And
the underdog seems to always, that's what's nice about all these sports. You see the underdog. In the Euro qualifiers also, you had some surprises already. Iceland.
Absolutely. It's the qualifier. So Israel played yesterday. They beat Andorra 4-1, which is their second consecutive.
A success for Israel.
It is.
Sports.
It doesn't mean anything yet. They're still they're
Okay.
second. They're second in the group. Wales still tops the charts. They've played one game more than Israel has. Israel's won both their games so far. Wales has won 2 and drew 1, so they still have 1 point over Israel. Still plenty of games to go. Israel will be playing Bosnia and Herzegovina on November the 16th. That's the thing. Bosnia, we actually saw them. They made it to the World Cup this summer, so you can't discount them. They haven't played as well so far. Obviously, Israel's ahead of them in the tables, but you can't discount them. And they also have Belgium, the team, and Wales has been playing surprisingly good. So for a group that doesn't have the big names like Spain and England and the Netherlands and these huge
I think the World Cup
powerhouses,
proved that even the big names are not always the one to put your money on.
Absolutely. So we're waiting to see what Israel does. They played very well against both Cyprus and Andorra, kind of 4-1 last night with a hat trick from one of their players. So
normally when we hear about
surprises
Israel
ahead
in
the
sports,
Euro
it's
16.
not a huge success. So I guess from here in the Jaffa Port, we'll say congratulations to the Israeli team for now. A very
hope it
limited
continues.
win. Merav Savil, thanks very much. Talking football at 4:40 GMT tonight, right?
Yes.
Awani Stav, thanks very much again for being with us. And that's it for us this morning. Don't forget to join us back here again tomorrow morning from the Jaffa Port. Until then, have a great day.